Every day at 5 p.m. sharp, a small terrier mix would sit by the front door and stare out into the road. He would sit there for hours every single evening, never taking his eyes off the road. The dog's name was Rocky, and he had been doing this every single day since his owner went missing 5 years ago. People in the neighborhood thought it was strange, but they soon got used to seeing the dog sitting by the door. They all assumed that Rocky was just waiting for his owner to come home, even though they knew deep down it wasn't true. Rocky had been adopted from a local animal shelter 5 years ago by an elderly woman named Martha. Martha was a kind woman who lived alone. She had no children, and her only company was Rocky. They had each other, and they were perfectly happy. Martha would take Rocky for long walks every morning, and they would spend their days playing fetch in the backyard. Every evening they would watch TV together and snuggle on the couch. But one evening, Martha didn't come home. Rocky waited by the door for her, but she never came in. The next morning, Martha was reported missing. The police searched everywhere for her, but they never found a trace of her. They had no idea what had happened. After a few weeks, Rocky was taken to the animal shelter. No one wanted to adopt an old dog, so Rocky spent most of his time alone in a cage. One day, a young couple came to the shelter to look for a dog. They were looking for a small dog that wouldn't shed much, so they were perfect for Rocky. After they signed the adoption papers, they took him home and introduced him to their kids. Rocky was a little scared at first, but the kids were very gentle with him, and soon he felt comfortable around them. They gave him lots of love and he loved them back. He would play with the kids every afternoon and go for walks with their dad. At night, he would cuddle with the mom on the couch while watching TV. Rocky was happy, but he couldn't help but feel a little sad sometimes. He missed Martha, and he wondered if she was thinking about him. 1 year after being adopted by the new family, Rocky was still waiting by the door for Martha to come home. The new family tried everything they could to stop him from doing that, but nothing worked. They talked to the vet, who suggested they give him medication, but the family didn't want to do that. They didn't want to turn Rocky into a zombie, so they continued to wait by the door. 5 years passed, and Rocky was now an old dog. He had gray muzzles, and his tail was always thumping softly against the floor. He was still waiting by the door every single day, never losing hope that Martha would come home. The people in the neighborhood thought it was strange, but they soon got used to seeing the old dog sitting by the door. They all assumed that Rocky was just waiting for his owner to come home, even though they knew deep down it wasn't true. One evening, a young girl was walking home from school. It was getting dark and she was afraid of being alone. She quickened her pace when suddenly she heard loud barks. She turned around to see an old terrier mix standing by the door, barking furiously. The dog looked scary, but the girl could see that he was just trying to protect her. So she walked up to the door and knocked. A woman opened the door and asked if she could help her. The girl explained that the dog had been barking at her and she was scared. The woman thanked her for letting her know and told her not to worry. The dog was just being protective. He does that to everyone who comes to the door. The girl didn't believe her, but before she could protest, the woman closed the door. As the girl walked away, she couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. She turned around and went back to the house. She knocked on the door again, and this time asked to speak to the dog's owner. A man opened the door and looked at her suspiciously. The girl asked again to speak to the owner of the dog, but the man just shook his head and started to close the door. That's when the girl noticed something. As the man was closing the door, she saw a picture of an old woman hanging on the wall. It was Martha. The girl realized that the man was lying to her, and that he was hiding Martha in the house. She demanded that the man let her in, but he just laughed and said, "No way." The girl was about to call the police when the dog ran to her and licked her hand. She looked down at him and saw a note tied around his collar. She untied the note and read, "Please help me." The girl knew that she had to do something. She ran to the phone and called the police. When they arrived, they searched the house and found Martha in the basement. She was weak and scared, but she was alive. The police arrested the man and took him away. Martha was taken to the hospital, where she made a full recovery. When she was released from the hospital, she went to the family's house to pick up Rocky. But when she opened the door, she saw that he was gone. She searched everywhere for him, but she couldn't find him anywhere. She was heartbroken, thinking that maybe he had moved on with his life without her. Days turned into weeks and weeks turned into months, but Rocky never came home. Martha was heartbroken, but she never gave up hope that he would come back to her someday. She put up flyers and made TV appearances, but there was still no sign of Rocky. One day, Martha was sitting on the couch watching TV when she heard a knock at the door. She went to the door and opened it to see a woman holding a small dog. "Is this your dog?" the woman asked. Martha's heart skipped a beat. Could it be Rocky? She looked down at the dog and saw that it was indeed Rocky. He was a little older and thinner, but it was definitely him. "Yes, that's my dog," she said, her voice trembling with emotion. She reached out and patooed him, and Rocky licked her hand excitedly. The woman explained that she had found Rocky wandering around the neighborhood and brought him to the animal shelter. When no one claimed him, she decided to keep him. "I'm so glad you found him," Martha said, her eyes welling up with tears. "Thank you so much." She invited the woman in and gave her a tour of the house. "It's amazing how much you've changed," Rocky said, looking around. He had so many questions, but he was too shy to ask them. He was afraid that Martha would get upset if he did, but then he remembered that Martha had missed him as much as he had missed her. So he gathered all his courage and asked, "Where have you been all these years? Why didn't you come back to me?" Martha looked down at Rocky and smiled. "I'm sorry I didn't come back sooner, but I promise I never stopped thinking about you." She hugged Rocky tightly, and he felt all the love and affection she had for him. He licked her face and wagged his tail happily. Rocky was finally home where he belonged, and from that day on, he never left Martha's side. They spent their days going for walks and playing fetch in the backyard, and their evenings watching TV and cuddling on the couch. Rocky was happy because he was finally home with the person he loved the most in the world.